we came back from Tampa because the Fullers were booking Memphis at the time. Robert Fuller and Ron Fuller, the sons of Buddy Fuller, and they were booking, and they decided to leave and go to Knoxville. They left the territory. So they left the territory empty, and we got a call from Jerry Jarrett that he needed a tag team. Could we come back to Memphis? And we did, and that's where Danny had just finished his training, and they put him with us because they didn't think he was ready to be in the ring as a pro wrestler. But as time went on, then he became a wrestler also. But he was our manager as Sergeant Danny Davis with the Blonde Bombers, and we were dressed in military outfits, and gosh, that's the Tupelo concession stand stuff happened during that time. I spoke with Jerry Jarrett not long ago, and he was on my radio show that I was doing at the time, and he says there's two things that people ask him about even after all these years: the Tupelo concession stand and Andy Kaufman, which was a big deal with Lawler and Memphis and everything. And I wasn't there for the Andy Kaufman, but the Tupelo thing came about. Like I said, the Fullers had taken all the talent. They had taken Fuji, Tanaka, Mongolian Stomper, Gorgeous George Jr. The whole talent left Jerry Jarrett with Lawler, Dundee, Coco, and just a few local guys from Memphis. Tommy and Eddie Gilbert. Eddie Gilbert was just starting in the business. He came into to Tupelo, and that was our starting night from Tampa. And he came in and said, fellas, we got to do something. We got to do something big because everybody's gone now, and we got to do. He said, you guys have a 2 out of 3 tag match. You, Lawler, Dundee, Larry, and Wayne. You guys go out there, go 3 falls. In the 3rd fall, you guys somehow or another win the match, and all hell breaks loose. And Lawler and Dundee started fighting us because we'd beat them for the belts and beating up on us and hitting us with the belts, and everybody was bleeding. And off in the concession stand we went and started fighting, and they were taping because they would always tape in Tupelo on a Friday night and get some footage for Saturday TV. So the taping crew came down, and here we are tearing up the whole place, taped it, put it on TV that Saturday morning. 10 hours later, the people saw it, couldn't believe what they had seen. All this whatever we were doing, cans, bottles, coffee mugs, I mean, you name it, we were throwing it. And that Saturday night, we went to Jonesboro, Arkansas. That was our Saturday night town. It was a turnaway crowd, biggest crowd they'd ever had. The ticket sales for the Monday night crowd, 16,000 tickets were sold out before we even got to the building on the Monday. And it turned the whole business around for Jerry Jarrett. And someone said, you guys created hardcore. Well, I don't know if we ever created it, because there's been a lot of good hardcore matches before that and a lot of hardcore matches after that. What we had was a controlled hardcore. We were able to leave there without going to the hospital, and getting stitches or anything like that. It was a controlled hardcore situation, but it turned the whole territory around, and I was part of it. The footage is very hard to find. Someone had it and put it on YouTube not so long ago, so it can be seen. You might be able to interject some of it in, because I don't think anyone owns the footage, because Jerry Jarrett never owned it, and somehow someone taped it and kept it all these years. I had a whole career before I was ever the Honky Tonk Man. I mean, I had like 10 or 12 years of this history you're going back to. The one thing that did happen to me in the Tupelo concession stand match was I had an old rusty nail that hit me somewhere in the back of the arm or something. I was a little worried about it. I took some antibiotics, but I never went to the doctor.
And, in later years, WCW actually would hold a yearly uncensored pay-per-view, and they would hold that in Tupelo, and it was known as kind of the No Rules pay-per-view. Do you think that whole pay-per-view was based on that concession stand?
Oh, I'm sure it was. That's interesting. And I'd mentioned Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Gilbert. Tommy was wrestling there full-time with those guys back then. And Larry and I, he was trying to break Eddie into the business as being his son. And we had a lot of tag matches with Eddie and Tommy. And Eddie was not on the card in Tupelo that night, but he was there watching, because he had to be at TV the following morning. Then, for all the fans that didn't know, Eddie Gilbert teamed up then with Paul Heyman and another fella over in Philadelphia, and they created this thing called ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling.